Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Seveney, and we've got back our special co-host, Jamie Bateman, with us today. Jamie, how are you today?
Doing great, Chris.
Good. So today we've got another jam-packed show for you. This one's going to be the Nightmare on Elm Street. We're going to talk about which little background story on it. It was a JV deal that Jamie and I had, and the property was actually on Elm Street, and it was a nightmare. So it's
Yes.
perfectly titled.
All of the above.
Yeah. So, of course, before we get started rolling on this episode, we like to start off with talking about some trials and tribulations lately. And Jamie, what have you got going on in the recent past?
Yeah, so I was going to mention an issue we had. It was actually a couple of months back. So it was I have a CFD in Kansas City, Missouri, and in the middle of July, we got a notification from the city that it was two different letters. One was a nuisance letter, and the other was a letter saying that all kinds of work needed to be fixed at this property. So meanwhile, this was when the U.S. mail was more snail-like than usual. So I got a letter.
Is that possible?
These two letters. Yeah. So the point I'm making there is got these two letters, and the next day is when these $100 per day fines were potentially going to start. So needless to say, I wasn't pumped about this. So I contacted our servicer. They were a little bit slow to respond, in my opinion. And so I contacted the borrower directly. And unfortunately, there's a language barrier there. And I think she mostly understood what I was saying, that we needed to get this junk out of the front yard. We needed to fix up the property. And but I guess she interpreted what I was saying as I was going to be fining her $100 a day. And that's not at all what I was saying. So thankfully, with the servicer's help, we were able to communicate a little better, and the borrower was very proactive and got everything squared away, even though the city was totally unresponsive to me. And we're good to go on that front. And then the other attachment they had with it was I guess if you have an LLC that owns a property in Kansas City, Missouri, you actually have to file some LLC affidavit. So a few weeks later, I get a notification from the city that they're going to continue with legal action against us if we don't file this form. And long story short, this was the first official conversion we did from a CFD to a note. So I'm looking forward to not getting any more of these notices.
Yeah, CFDs, which talked about a lot on this episode, can be challenging. And getting those notices now, I remember getting the first one, and it was just kind of like, oh my God, I was flipping out. Now you get them, I get them like junk mail. It's like, okay, here's another one. And you just, it's interesting because it's all about perspective and having been through things. When you've been through things so often, you're just experienced with it, and it's just like, yep, here's another one. My trial and tribulation, so I have two I want to talk about. One is some of the crazy stuff that goes on, which, I forwarded you the email earlier this week about a property that I have a note on where the nephew got arrested on a drug bust on the property with 2 kilos of Coke or something like that.
Heroin.
Yeah. And so forth. And it's funny because I was, telling my wife about it, and I'm like, oh, should I even bother telling her this one? And it's funny, her first thing is, well, is the lady paying? She's like, it's not her.
Right.
And I chuckled that, but that's some of the crazy stuff that goes on, and you just can't. That's the stuff that's out of your control, and you just gotta roll with the punches. The other is, I want to touch base on is, and this is why I love this business and why the podcast is called Good Deeds, and really about making a difference. And I have a contract for deed where the borrower defaulted about 3 years ago. I bought the loan about a year ago now. And, borrower was spotty and so forth. And, the borrower actually reached out to call me because there was an issue where the property actually had 2 parcel IDs. The driveway was another one that got lost at tax sale and wanted to get it redeemed. And they were dealing with, a large fund prior who wouldn't do anything about it. So I said, let me look into it and I'll get it taken care of. And it was literally like $150. So, and she was afraid like, oh my God, I'm going to lose a driveway. And I'm like, let me just look into it. And when it was $150, I'm like, took care of it and got it done. So, while I had her, I said, hey, just wanted to touch base kind of what's going on and stuff and see, if there's any way we can help. And she's like, yeah, it's just been rough. She's like, I'm in my mid 70s and my son, you just turned 50, is battling cancer. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And, mentioned how she has a grandchild as well and asked if I could defer, the 5 months or so that were behind payments. And I was like, yes, absolutely. Like, she's like, we'll keep paying. We now have the income and stuff, but we just, went through some hard times. So, haven't heard from her in a while. And then she left me a message this past Monday morning, and I called her back and she was crying. And that's when I knew, like, my stomach just dropped. And she's like, Kenny's gone. And I was like, oh, and it was just,
Wow.
I mean, heart-wrenching to hear that, that happened. And, I've joked in the past how, I've, had some borrowers, are deceased, or I bought loans that are deceased. And, it's, it's not something, that, I joke about in the sense of, I do buy loans where people are deceased. It's a part of my business strategy. I don't, also want to say like, don't underestimate or, life itself. It's very, something we all don't want to take for granted. So, her biggest concern was with it being contract for deed was, probate and some of these other avenues and so forth and so on of, what's going to happen and so forth. And I, basically my immediate thing was, let me take care of that and I'll get back to you. You got to go take care of your family and what's best for your family. I said, don't worry about the house right now. We will get it squared away. And she's like, I'll keep paying. I'm like, if you make your payments, we will get it squared away. And, working out some logistics and some details and stuff. But, it made me think if this was a large bank, they would be, well, sorry, pay it up,
Right.
Pay it off or, sell the property. And you've got, a 70-year-old woman living here with her 6-year-old grandson who just lost her son, which, putting, having a child pass is probably the worst thing that could ever happen to somebody. Like,
I can't imagine.
Yeah, have a heart. I mean, but unfortunately, like these big institutions, they just, and again, maybe they would. My sense would be they basically treat it just as, whatever.
It's just another loan.
Yeah, but for us, we get that flexibility where we get a little more attached to some of these, and we can make that difference. And
I was just going to add on. It's not nearly as dramatic, Chris, but it's funny how our two stories go together here. I had actually deferred 3 months for these 2 borrowers in Kansas City because they are an elderly couple and they run a cleaning business and they were shut down because of the pandemic. And so my point in interjecting that is that I do think there was a lot more goodwill, between the 2 parties. And I do think that's one reason they were so responsive in fixing up the property. And it just goes a long way. Not that I was doing it for selfish reasons, but that you're just touching on that human element, bad things do happen to good people. So,
yeah. And, and this isn't an opportunity where you want to go and take advantage of a situation, which I don't even know what advantage situation could be, but, just, and it was at the end of the conversation where she wanted to bake me cookies, so, and I probably stayed on the phone with her for 20 minutes because she needed somebody to talk to. And, it was really interesting because, she's got some friends and some other family, but I think it was just somebody who didn't really, know much about it, just somebody she could kind of talk to. And at the end of the day, just, have that conversation. And, she called me back, yesterday with, just a quick question on something and so forth and so on. But, it goes back to, like you said, being able to do a good deed. And,
Yep.
This business, everyone's in the business to make money, but, there's also, the social impact that you can make. And that's, kind of why I love and enjoy this business. So probably a little long-winded. I apologize. As many of you know, I can talk a lot, but that's kind of my trial and tribulation. So besides the heroin drug bust, that we have, and I joked with you, that's, great marketing. But yeah. So let's actually roll into our, our main segment here, which, today is the Nightmare on Elm Street. So this was one, Jamie, I think it was about 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was April of 2018.
Yeah. So April of 2018, I had a contract for deed in Maryland that I had posted to some people seeking, a JV deal on. Some of the numbers, the UPB was roughly, again, rough number, about $60,000, I believe, somewhere in that range. And the investment was just under 30 grand?
It was 28 is what we bought it for.
Yep. So 28,000, what we acquired it for. And it was interesting because one of the things with CFDs in Maryland that our favorite lawyer, Brian Gallagher, had mentioned was, hey, look, in Maryland with a CFD, the borrower can cancel anytime before it's recorded and get all their money back. And when we were looking at it, it was like, that initially scares everyone. But then when when I evaluate a deal, I'm like, okay, she's paid like 20 grand. So if I'm getting for 28, she pays 20, the BPO and everything, but BPOs was, I think, like 100, right around 100, I think.
Yeah, if not a little higher than that.
Yeah. And the comps in the areas were, there were solid $150,000, $200,000 homes in this neighborhood. So, we were thinking, okay, this thing could be a dump, which, was, of course, the Crystal Palace. And, we're thinking, okay, it's going to be worth something. So right off the bat on this one was interesting, was got in contact with borrower, and we wanted to get the, of course, the CFD recorded, but she was also way behind. So we asked her if she wanted a mod and also drop her payment down by $100 a month. And then we'd roll in the past due balance, which we did, and she signed. So it was interesting. But one of them, Jimmy, do you know what the mistake I made when I did that was?
Didn't get it recorded? I don't know.
No, we got recorded, but when we did it as another contract for deed instead of a traditional mortgage and note.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, I could see that now.
Yeah. So we'll explain why in a bit. But so for people who, invest in Maryland, CFDs provide zero added value. You still have to foreclose. It's kind of like Florida. CFD in Florida does nothing for you. CFD in Georgia does nothing for you.
Does nothing. Yeah. It gives you more liability and really no more upside than a traditional note and mortgage.
Yeah. And we say that because you still have to foreclose. So the borrower still gets to keep that equity. Unlike Indiana, where if you get a forfeiture, you can keep any equity in a property if it ever exists. In these states, you lose it anyways. So you just have your name on a deed that you have no control over the property. What was interesting, so the borrower, signs up, and was paying for a little while. But of course we had, about $3,000 in costs, to record the CFD and then record the mod. And then, basically there were some past due taxes that we had to advance, and, everything kept, so the money that was coming in, unfortunately, Jamie as my partner wasn't getting any of it because it was going to, the expenses. And on this one, actually, I kind of early on saw that, we could have some expenses. And I actually did not go to the well, meaning I didn't ask Jamie to continue to contribute any funds at the time. Were you shocked by that, by the way?
I mean, I think I asked once or twice, and you're like, you kept paying for everything. So I was surprised. Yes. I mean, I was fully expecting to have to, front some more funds.
Yeah. But so in typical JV deal, I do the work, and the investor, I'm sponsoring, and the investor provides the funds. In this case, though, I was paying out of pocket some of this because I saw, it was, the costs were getting up there pretty quickly on things. So then we had the infamous default on this borrower, which this one, it was just painful. The borrower would go back and forth on things. The borrower, would get a deed, said they signed a deed in lieu, then wouldn't sign a deed in lieu. During that time, Jamie, was there anything that you, trying to negotiate her that kind of stuck in your head?
Well, I mean, the other kind of low light was the water bill.
Oh yeah. We we can go back to that. So yeah. So as part of this, contract for deed, it's in my name. Get a call from the county, and they're like, "There's a leak at this property." And then I'm like, "Okay," and they're like, "Well, yeah, it's like 200,000 gallons of water." And then like all of a sudden my heart just drops. And at first they told me it would be about $20-something thousand. And I was like, oh my God. And then they called me back, and I don't know, it was like 10 or 13 or somewhere.
Around 10, I think.
Yeah, it was around 10. And I got the call right before I was going on a podcast episode. So I didn't even, I forgot to let my partner know, that we had this, and, Jamie's listening, and go ahead.
So, I was, I think you were putting the podcast out, pretty quickly after you were recording them. So it was a couple of days after you recorded, I think, but I'm driving to work listening to the podcast. And you're giving clues here and there about the property, but trying not to give too much information away. But you mentioned that it's a land contract, and that it's in Maryland, and then that there's and it's a JV deal, and $20,000 water bill. And I don't think I quite finished the podcast by the time I got to work, but I immediately sent you an email, and I'm like, is this our deal? And yep, it sure was. So, but I think you were able to negotiate that down a little bit. And then you also were able to get us on a payment plan with the county, right? Or I don't know if it was the city or county, but
yeah, it was the city, and I was on a payment plan about $500 a month. And I do apologize, because that is one of the things that, I try and focus on is communication. And after I heard that, I was swearing at myself, like, I can't believe I didn't let him know. And
you're very good at communicating.
Yeah, and again, I know people out there who literally don't hear from people for months, and I like to report, to people at least on a monthly basis. Now I have the portal, but it was, when we got that, and basically I knew we basically have to pay it, eventually. And I was hoping, what really sucked about this was when I spoke to the county or city, they had already been in there, and they had notified her, because they went to check to make sure it was still a good meter. They told her she had a leak. And then she provides, this is awesome, she provides a letter from somebody who claims to be a plumber, says they fixed it. And so I called the county, and they're like, no, we have, we can tell by the meters, because they can tell a continuous flow versus periods of flow. And they're like, it seems like it's better, but it's still a continuous flow. And so eventually we found that she was actually traveling, borrower.
Yeah.
So we ended up.
She was a traveling nurse, I think, right?
Yeah. So we turned the water off. The attorney basically said, hey, look, she's traveling, turn it off. And, honestly, we weren't even sure if she would know.
Right.
But, which she didn't, I don't believe. But, it was one of those things where, you just can't turn water off on people. But with it being a leak, I had the attorney talk with the city and stuff, and they basically said, well, yes, you can turn it off to repair it, which we turned it off to repair it, but we couldn't get access until we got her permission, which we pretty much never did. So it kind of stayed in that la la land. But this is one of the things with CFD that really sucks, is you own the property, but you have no rights to the property. So it really, that's painful. So, yes. So eventually, we do get her to sign a deed in lieu on the property, which and as part of that, it was during this whole COVID crisis. So, we struck a deal where from when the state lifted their state of emergency, I think she had like 30 days or something along those lines to move out.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I think, I mean, Brian had put in a lot of time and you had as well on this. And we were really close to getting the foreclosure done because she was not communicative. And, I mean, I would say we were at the 5-yard line, really close to getting this thing done. And that's when all the courts shut down, just to back up slightly. So there were lots of highs and lows with this thing. And, it looked like we were real close to foreclosure. There was all this equity in there, and then everything's shut down. But then was it a month later or something, or maybe you suggested, let's just try her one more time. And then she did sign the deed in lieu, like you said.
Yep. So she signs the deed in lieu, and we get the property back. And Jamie goes and visits the property.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't even tell you I was heading up there, did I?
I think you sent me a message saying, "Hey, I'm just going to head up there."
Yeah, and then I think we FaceTimed a little bit, and I walked around the property with my phone. But yeah, wasn't in great shape, that's for sure.
Were you impressed that I got it? It cost $1,000 to clean it out. Were you?
Oh
impressed?
yeah,
that's all it was.
Very impressive. So this is so I was impressed with the area because Cecil County has some not so great areas, to be honest, but I wasn't all that familiar with this area itself. And the neighborhood is nice, and the house is big, and has nothing to do with that. I mean, I can see why on paper the property value looks like 120 or even higher, but there was so much trash and just disgusting. I just don't know how people live like that. I mean, there was a huge dog crate in there, and I mean, looked like animals had been living in the attic. And I went through there twice. Once before any of the trash had been gone, and then again after some of it was removed. And yeah, I don't know how you got that price for that trash out.
Snappy Cleanouts is who did it. Found them on Facebook. So yeah, the house was, outside of the house, there was stuff stacked along the side of the house. There was a car on the property.
Yep.
That was still there, which, basically was abandoned. So, told the cleanout guy, I'm like, take it, have it with it. It was abandoned. So the inside of the house, did you ever make it inside the house?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Twice. I went through it twice. Yeah.
Okay.
Inside of it.
Yeah. And, your father was the agent on it, what was his reaction?
Well, he's slowed down a bit in his career, but he's used to doing a lot of business, and he'll work with investors, but it's not his normal deal. So his reaction when I sent him the pictures initially was that he wasn't going to list it in that state, but I think once we got it cleared out, and he likes a challenge, so he was willing to take it on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember going back and forth about listing it, and at first we were going to list it for a little over 100, I believe, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which we knew was a little aggressive, but again, this location, it wasn't an area that was really nice. It was close to the water. There's a lot of development in the area. There's a big water park going on. Go ahead.
Exactly. Great Wolf Lodge is still supposed to be going in, I believe. That's like a $20 million project or something. And supposedly a brewery right a block away. And it definitely seems like it's more on the upswing than the opposite. So I don't think we were that crazy for trying to list it at that price point.
Yeah. And so, we list it, and people start going through, and, everyone, interesting story. I want to throw this in there because I called Jamie, and I'm curious to your reaction on this. So like after we get it cleaned out and stuff, or actually it was before I think we even got cleaned out, somebody says like, oh, they knew somebody and walked through the house. And they're like, yeah, I know there's like still $2,000 left on taxes. And they offered us like $500 for the house. And I called Jamie just to let him know that. And again, this is, sometimes communication. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's probably thinking he's going to lose $30,000 right now of his investment. What went through your mind when that happened?
Yeah, well, I'm glad on that one, I'm glad you didn't consult with me. I mean, I just figured that was some, guy taking a shot, but yeah, it's not really encouraging to hear offers like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, we list it, and after, the first round, we actually had a good amount of showings, I think, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think through the whole time we had a pretty good amount of foot traffic.
Yeah. And, everyone kept coming back with the same thing, it's overpriced.
Yeah.
So, we keep, dropping. And then finally, we do, get an offer on the property. And, at one point in time, I was even talking to my wife. My wife's like, maybe we'll take a ride up there and see what it consists of. And, maybe we'll buy it even. And,
yeah. And I'll just say, I've done 4 pretty decent rehabs at this point. And, that was not a project I was willing to take on. I mean, I do think there was a little bit of money to be made, hopefully still, for a rehabber. But that was a massive project. And the fact that the house was big, yeah, that can help with property values, but it also is a lot more expensive to fix it up. I think we got a couple different offers, along the way there, but nothing that we were really too serious about entertaining.
Yeah. So, and then we finally, get an offer. But I just want to jump back. Like you mentioned, taking on too much rehab. That's, smart that people do that, because sometimes people will take on too much. I've got a property here locally that is scheduled to go to foreclosure, and they put on the market to try and sell before, because they do have the equity in it, but they can't go the bankruptcy route because they've been through it 3 times already and got dismissed each time. So they put it on the market, and I had somebody do a video tour of it yesterday, and man, oh man, it's this place, basement's filled with mold, the roof ceilings are all collapsing in, you just shake your head how people live like this. And, I look at it and, it's a small house, it's under 1,000 square feet, but still, just it's too much work and effort, for it, and way too much risk. I'd rather start new construction than take on something like that. And I think a lot of people are thinking about this property in that same fashion. But again, it was tough because, the house, if it's fixed, is going to be worth over $200,000. And it's just a question of how much you want to put into it.
Right. Yeah. So. And one thing I will say on the listing itself, for people that ever run into this situation, I mean, don't try to, we put up some accurate pictures, I think, and then part of the description, the description focused on the area and things like that. And obviously you want to sell the property, but my dad said, basically don't, in the listing, don't go into the basement, and it's like, I think we also put up some pictures that were not too positive. So I think it's better to be realistic with those kinds of things. So.
Yeah. And, you're absolutely right. Basically, you don't show one room that looks great and then nothing else in the house. That's the one room that doesn't have, didn't have a foot of water standing in it, something along those lines.
Right. Exactly.
So, we finally, get the offer, we get accepted. We've, closed on this thing now, and, just, running through the final numbers. And I just popped open, you want to, you kind of know some of the final numbers, but overall, do you want to guess, for people listening? So we bought this thing for $28,000, 2.5 years. You want to guess what our out-of-pocket expenses were? Any idea?
I'll say 35,000.
Yeah. If you include the full water bill, yeah. So I was out of pocket 30, and then there was still $5,000 left on the water bill. So, and this was one, and we talked during the process. I reached out to you at one point in time and said, "Hey, do you just want to buy me out?" In this because for me, I was out, 35,000, 30 grand out of I was out the same as you, and it sucked because we knew there wasn't going to be a lot of skin, in this one. We joked that the only one making money is your father and the attorney, and you're going to get between a Dunkin' Donuts coffee and a Starbucks, which I still owe you, which Debbie actually
haven't seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, when Debbie finishes the books, I'll determine what, she sent me my August books yesterday that had all the final bills for this one in it. And I sent back to her because there's some stuff that, I need to get coded to it. But so, but I share that because, in this story, a few things. One is, the communication, do you think during the whole time, do you think there's a lot of back and forth and dialogue on things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're very fast to communicate. That's yeah. I think there was a lot of back and forth, and you would ask my opinion on whether we, the first time she accepted the deed in lieu, allegedly, you wanted my opinion. Should we take it? Which should we? What should we do? How much should we?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I remember you called me. I was actually at a Maryland football game, and you called me and told me about the deed in lieu offer that she had agreed to sign, and definitely you wanted my input on how much we should give her, if anything, for cash for keys. And there was a lot of back and forth through this entire 2.5-year process, and a lot of communication. So it was literally a joint effort, joint venture, and there was a lot of communication, which I think obviously is critical.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the communication, also, again, discussing these ideas with your partner, because in making it be a full decision from people, because
Exactly.
you want that decision to be made by both people, not just one. So and that's one of the things I think, I hope, as you now have JV partners and stuff, you kind of take that with your, investors and stuff, because I think it's one of the most critical things that you can have, because, deals go bad. And if you communicate with people and just let them know, they're not going to be yelling and screaming at you. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I have several, JV deals still ongoing, and a lot of it does depend on the JV partner as well, as far as how much communication they want. I joke with my one friend who lives in New York. He's an attorney, and I joke that he basically just, made a contribution to my business, because he, I could barely even get him to sign the JV agreement because he's so busy, and it's not something he's into on a day-to-day basis. But I still send out at least a quarterly, formal report, and oftentimes much more frequent emails, just to keep him in the loop. And then I have other JV partners that kind of want to know what's going on, every week or two. So yeah, communication's critical.
Yeah. And sometimes, may come a point in time too where someone's reaching out every week, and it's like, hey, look, we sent the demand letter. I'm not going to hear anything till, October 25th, so why don't you touch base in 2 weeks, and I'll tell people, you don't need to email me next week, because I may not respond to you, because, and it's one of those things where you gotta have to manage, because, be honest, there are people who can be a royal pain in the ass who you may not want to do business with. I've got people like that I worked with in the past, and, I shouldn't say they were a pain in the ass. My style and their style doesn't mix. I'll be honest, I considered them one, but, are they really? No. They just have, their way of management is different than my way of management. And from that perspective, it's better probably just to cross paths. I've had people reach out to me wanting to partner with me. And basically after having some conversations with them, I'm like, this isn't the right fit. Or I've done a deal with somebody and it's like, hey, did you have other deals? And I'm like, why don't you go work with Jamie?
I've noticed an uptick in people contacting me, Chris.
Well, I mean, I
That's
tell
funny.
people, I'll be honest, I don't do, the individual JVs anymore. So people ask, hey, who can I do them with? I throw
Yeah.
your name out there, good, bad, or
Yeah.
indifferent.
No, I
So,
appreciate it. Right.
and I
Yeah.
think I sold 2 of your partials yesterday, which one of them was a note that I actually sold to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been I'm pretty much all out of partials at this point, but yeah, I do
believe you have
appreciate
4.
that.
I believe you have 4, if I'm correct. So
For what, partials from you?
oh no, 4 partials to sell right now, which this person was contemplating buying 2.
Oh, 2 were taken today. So update, 2 left.
Does he have the same initials as me, just inversed?
I guess so. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
Yep.
yeah, that's why I spoke with him yesterday. I've been helping him
Okay.
do some bidding on assets, and he asked who did partials. The funny thing about this is he asked me who did partials, and I don't think he ever asked me if I had any partials to sell. He just went right to you.
That's funny.
But hey,
I don't like working with you, but who could you recommend?
yeah. Hey, I'll learn from you. Can you teach me everything?
Yeah,
And,
right.
I'll spend an hour on the phone, like teaching
And
you
I'll
how to
pay
bid.
someone
But
else.
yeah, but I'm gonna go give my partials from else. No, so what are some of your last before we head into the nuts and bolts segment? What are some of your final thoughts on this deal? And things maybe that you saw that were very educational for you that you may have been like, oh wow, I'm glad I knew about that, or things like oh man, I can't believe this happened, or things to look out for. What do you walk away from with something like this besides making
Yeah,
money?
um, truth be told, when we started this deal, I didn't know a whole lot about CFDs versus notes, and certainly didn't know that there is no real advantage in Maryland to owning a CFD. So that's something I've learned along the way, and I've purchased a bunch of CFDs myself in other states. You never know. Don't spike the football too soon, because there were points where we thought we were going to make maybe not a killing, but this was going to be a pretty good deal. And it turned out it could have been a lot worse, could have been a lot better. There were a lot of ups and downs. Communication is key. There's a human element to all of it. Personally, I'm not targeting Maryland. I'm glad you were the one kind of running the day to day, and Brian was doing a lot. But yeah, it's probably turned me off to certainly CFDs in Maryland. But I don't know. How about you?
Well, this also was occurring at time with the whole debt collection license in Maryland as well. So that was one item we didn't touch upon, but
That's right.
there's the whole component whether or not you needed that. I'm still bullish on Maryland. I mean, you look at, so this is what's crazy. This woman at one point in time, I just opened my QuickBooks. Let me see if I can see here. Made payments in September and October of 2018. Then basically, so October is when we did the mod because she put some money down, then paid in January,
Yeah, that's
then
right.
paid like in January, February, April, and May. So it's like, okay, we've got, 4 out of 5 months. And we're sitting there looking at this thing, at a point in time, like, wow, 4 out of 5, UPB now of, I think, it was over 60,000. Hey, look, we're going to, $900 a month, stuff, so you think, okay, we might, over a year take in after escrow and stuff, 7,000, and then turn around and sell this thing for like in the 40s or something like that at 80 cents on a dollar, the mid 40s. You're looking at, a 50% return, when you look at, certain things at one point in time, only for, everything to come crashing down on you. And then since that delinquency, hold on, I'm going to just put something, in here from, since when she went delinquent in May of that time to today, which, what's today? 9, hold on. We had spent, $17,000 extra dollars, so we'd already been, in it for a little over 10, actually 22 when you include the water. So all of that kind of happened after the fact. So, these things can get expensive, and this is why you got to be careful, when you're buying stuff, when people are paying 55, 60 cents on a dollar, you got to be very, very careful, because you never know what's going to happen. So, and in this instance, if we would have paid $50,000 on this thing, we'd be in a lot of hurt right now.
That would have stung. Yep. Do you think there's any chance we could have, in hindsight, gotten, I know a lot of times, I know you've suggested this too, but get an interior inspection or at least some interior photos from the borrower as a stipulation for doing a modification?
I do now. So that is a great, that should have been your note and bolt, honestly.
We didn't transition to notes and bolts.
So that's, this is a bonus segment. So I look back at, some of the things I did wrong was one being doing another CFD, should have done a note. That's on me. So, I learned from that. Yes. Going forward now, when I do modifications, I get interior inspections. So I, use, and if people are against it, what you can, say is, we need, as part of this modification, confirm, basically that, especially if you're adding, if you're actually wrapping money past due into the loan, you should really pre-qualify them, like the ability to repay. And as part of that, you do need to do some type of evaluation on the property for value. So, that's what I tell people now is, hey, I need, this information from you to qualify you, as well as we do need to get an inspection done as part of this. Now, also, one thing that just literally popped in my head while talking this, and this is what's great. You just brought this up, and here's something that I'm going to throw right back at you. When you convert a CFD to a note, are you getting interior inspections?
Short answer, no.
Me neither. But why not? Why aren't we?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
It's so, and people listening are like, probably laughing at us, but you brought that up and it just popped in my head. Well, oh man, what, why am I doing this? Or have the borrower just snap some photos from me,
Right. Yeah, I have done that for, a recent purchase, for example. I got the borrower to send, through the note seller pictures of the interior to see what it looked like. And I've also did it on the Jacksonville deal when we did cash for keys. But no, I didn't even think about it as far as these conversions, which we are in the process of doing several of them. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and I know, the one.
And typically the borrowers are. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know the one in Flint that I sold to you. That one I believe had an interior inspection after I did a mod or got lined up with a mod.
Yep. And she's paying and good to go. So.
Are you serious?
I
would have never expected that. And that's what's. Go ahead. That's crazy.
No. Yeah. That one's actually I'm relatively optimistic about. So, that's a good point. I was going to say most of the time, once the CFD borrowers understand the difference between a land contract and a note and mortgage, which some of them do immediately, some of them don't. Once they really grasp, the difference, the major differences, they're usually on board. So, why wouldn't they? And that's the whole point. They want the home. They want the home ownership. So I think for the most part, they would be compliant with doing an interior inspection. So that's a good idea.
Yeah. Wow. I'm still shocked because I never in a million years, and that's what's crazy about this business. As borrowers, you're like, this is, money in the bank. This person's going to pay. And then there's others you're like, this one's probably, never going to make it and stuff. That one, I figured at some point in time, you'd be selling that property to Adam Adams down the line because he buys a lot in Flint and stuff.
So I got a performer for you then.
Yeah, there you go. So,
you want to buy it back?
Well, it's interesting because that one is an example. So I just posted on Bigger Pockets. I had a loan where the borrowers hadn't paid in 5 years, and we called them up, and they were like, okay, and made a payment. I believe that loan as well had a good 4 or 5 years of no payments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
But so you kind of, people already got I'll call it a free note and bolt, which of course they're all free anyways. But I was gonna say, what was your note and bolt?
So my note and bolt, we bought recently a note in Tampa, Florida, and I have been trying out a new product. People complain about BPOs and the lack of accuracy across the industry. It doesn't mean all BPOs are bad. I'm not saying that, but I've been trying out a new product. I think Chris, I don't know if you've tried it yet, but you're definitely familiar with it. It's essentially just a desktop appraisal. And we got a couple of them back and I was very happy with them, but this particular note that I was buying in Tampa, we couldn't get the appraisal done. So, I had about 2 weeks to close, which is kind of standard, we might have had a little less than that. And a week in, I find out, the appraiser said they're not going to do it. And then apparently another appraiser turned it down as well. So 7 or 8 days in, I've got only a few more days to close on this. And I can't get an appraisal done. I guess they have different standards than the realtor does with the BPO. So my note and bolt is try out Raven Spatial. It's Bobby Quinn's company. It's still somewhat of a work in progress. They do drone imagery and a panoramic from the front of the property. So I did that. He had it done within 24 hours, really. And it was quite helpful because this property actually has a 2-acre lot, and I was able to see a lot more of the roof than I otherwise would have been able to see, which apparently is why the appraiser wouldn't do the appraisal, because of some siding damage and a little bit of roof damage. But ultimately was able to confirm that there really weren't any major issues whatsoever. And there, at least from the exterior, it looks like a really well-maintained property. And I did also get a BPO just to kind of, put myself at ease. And I know Bobby is working on kind of bringing together the imagery along with some type of appraisal product. I do think there's a need in the note business for this type of product to, I've seen some handwritten BPOs that, I don't know, pretty much worthless. So I think there's some room for improvement across the industry there. But just a point, to mention, I was pretty happy certainly with the turnaround time and the imagery that he was able to provide, and hopefully he can improve upon the actual data that's incorporated into a full scope appraisal report. But I'm optimistic about it.
Good. And I forgot what mine was.
Well, I had the freebie earlier, so that's
yeah. So no, you had the freebie earlier. I could go on. Actually, you know what? I'm going to kind of mention this because this happened to me recently, where I was looking to buy a note that somebody called performing, and you kind of hit upon this in a message the other day too about like performing and something that was originated 60 days ago. No, that's really not a performing loan. In our world, it isn't. But this is an interesting one.
It should be.
This is a first in my book. So, the guy sends over the collateral. So here's my note and bolt, actually. Then I'll tell the story. Do not spend any money until somebody emails you the soft collateral. So do not send anybody money until you get a copy of the note, mortgage, deed, whatever it is in the file. And here's the reason why.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So this person, got under agreement, and basically 2 days later, I'm like, hey, I need this information, and the person, well, aren't you ordering, title and stuff? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't order it until you give me this stuff, because I've learned the hard way that I've gotten stuff where they tell me, oh, I have the lost note and I don't have any allonges, and it's like, okay, there's nothing to it. So this is a first. So first sends over the mortgage, which, I'm like looking at it and kind of like wondering if it was typed by like a seventh grader, and then sends over the note. I'm reading the note, and the note is, executed and signed, but it's signed by him, the lender. Like there's no note to the borrower. He's got a mortgage to the borrower, but the note is signed by him. So I'm like, sorry, I'm back. I go, where's the note the borrower signed? Well, they don't sign the note. I sign the note. I'm like, so you're signing a note that you owe this much money? So that should be a red flag that this person has no clue what they're doing. And based off of that, with the property being owner occupied, you really think they follow Dodd-Frank and, CFPB regulations?
And the SAFE Act. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And what's even better is this loan is in North Carolina, which, many people don't know.
It's tricky.
Yes. North Carolina isn't a bad state, but from a servicing perspective, you got to have your stuff together. And, you're not even supposed to reach out in North Carolina. Most of it has to be done by your servicer. So I just walk from it. But yeah, so my note and bolt is, don't spend money. And people will be like, oh, you got 2 weeks to close. I'm like, no, I got 2 weeks to close from when you send me the soft collateral, and that's what I tell people. And people will go like a week without sending it.
Right.
I'm like, well, go ahead.
No, I had it's similar, just a real quick piggyback. We're giving lots of freebies today, but I had one very recently where I spent money on due diligence, and then this was through PaperStack, and they have as many people know, they have the negotiation phase and they have the closing phase. Well, typically I don't spend any money till we have a purchase sale agreement. We're in the closing phase. Well, we ended up closing on this, so it was all good. But I had spent several $100s on all this due diligence, and then the guy says, "Well, I've got several other people doing due diligence on this. And I'm like, wait a minute here. We better close. You accepted this price, And just a quick lesson to myself: don't spend money on due diligence until at least you have a purchase sale agreement, something under contract. I'm okay with spending money that's a sunk cost if you find out that there's something incurable with the title, or the property is in terrible shape. I'm okay with kind of wasting money in that sense, but I'm not okay with spending money that if we're not don't actually have a legally binding agreement. So that was my mistake, but it worked out okay.
Yeah. And I've also, done things in the past where I've held off on ordering title if the property has been vacant or, hasn't paid in a long time. I may wait a day or two to order title and just get eyes on the property for like the 20 or 40 bucks first before spending 150 on the title. Because if the property's, basically can't be seen from the street and it's got vines growing all around it, you're not going to buy it anyways. Yeah. So why waste 150 bucks on the title? And I used to initially with Harbor, this is where I learned, a bid on 2 tapes that I had like 5 assets under agreement each time. And both times, because they're like 3 days after each other, I had ordered the BPO, and this was when earlier in my days when I was paying 100 and something bucks for a BPO plus another 150 for an O&E. So I was out like 2,500 bucks, like, and I didn't buy any of them because they're all trash. And that's actually what started the toxic asset list that we had back in the day with these CFDs, which people ask, it's not around anymore because somebody bought all those assets. But, that's the reason why is people forget that, when you are in this business and have a business, there's going to be deals that you spend money on that you don't buy, and that can get costly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I know you advocate kind of working with the same few sellers that you've worked with before. And I think you develop that trust in the industry where you can probably avoid wasting that money up front if if you trust the person you're buying from.
Yeah. Like, I've got, some assets that I'm probably going to bid on today or this weekend that, I bought from the seller in the past. And this person is so meticulous with their files. It's awesome because like when stuff comes through, like I know the chain is there already. And then I've got another guy I buy from, and I know when they come through, I'm going to have to literally like lock myself in a closet to try and figure out the collateral because it's a mess. But in the same token, that mess is, heavily discounted to, significantly that they don't have the time to deal with it. So they know smaller investors do. So they don't mind selling it and just getting out from underneath them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, any final thoughts as we wrap up our Nightmare on Elm Street segment?
No, all in all, there are a lot of good stories from this one, and I appreciate you being communicative. And it's could have been a lot worse.
So next episode, do you want to talk about one of your nightmares? You can always, roll through any of yours, or you don't have any nightmares because all 1,000 of your deals are awesome. So
yeah, I'm perfect over here.
Well,
yeah, that's fine.
I'll just put guru between the Jamie and the Bateman. Jamie the Guru Bateman. So perfect history and so forth.
I actually buy assets.
Oh, good one. I was gonna say my cynicism is really starting to come out, but no, that's a good, it's that's a good one. So I forget, I was mentioning that the other day to somebody. I'm gonna ramble on right now, but somebody mentioned something, and it was on, I think, the Facebook group where somebody asked, I want to do some weekend presentations and stuff. And I said, honestly, I just been too busy because I just bought like 50 assets, and I said, I'm actually, I want to help people, but I'm also, not a guru because I'm actually buying assets. So, but yeah,
it kind of gets in the way.
So,
yeah.
Good dig against all those gurus out there. So,
well, not all educational programs are bad, to be clear. There are some good ones, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people got to learn somewhere, and it's, some of these programs, I think the benefit, and I'll be honest, I mean, I always tout, you can find stuff online and so forth. But, I've also changed my tune as I've started to talk to people who are getting started, and, giving them some guidance and some assistance in regards to, some of these programs that if everything's there and in order, it's easier for them to follow.
That's it. That's the key, I think, is it's if you're paying for that organization and the sequence of learning versus this, patchwork of everything is free by itself. But I think it's the compilation and the organization, like you said, that you're paying for.
And I know if I ever, if I did a training course, I know, Gail had always been twisting my arm, as well as another investor. She'll want me to name it after her because she heckled me so many times about putting something together. But if I did, it would be like, it'd probably be called like anal note investing, because I'd probably get too far into the weeds. Well, thanks again, Jamie, for joining us on this episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. For everyone out there, thank you for listening, and make sure to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Amazon. We're on Amazon now as well. iHeartRadio, I believe, and I even think Pandora. So you can find us anywhere. So please leave us a review. And if you're looking for more information on Facebook, join the Notes and Bolts from the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. So thank you all for listening today. And remember, go out and do some good deeds.
Take care, everyone.